is this guy I keep seeing all over the internet? This handsome young man in a suit who travels the world hanging out with important people like China's president, Venezuela's president, the supreme leader of Iran, these scary guys and this scary guy.
Can you hear me all right?
He must be a big deal. He gets to be in the room and in the car with Vladimir Putin himself.
Yo, how's it going, everybody? How we doing?
We're doing good. Welcome to the Internet Reviewed. This episode, I'm reviewing the internet's biggest I'm reviewing Jackson Hinkle.
I personally don't want strong-minded shorties up in my shit because I want to be the one manipulating them and exploiting them.
Well, I am a strong-minded shorty, so apologies in advance to Jackson because I am going to get up in his shit. Jackson Hinkle is simultaneously one of the most viral accounts on X and the most censored man on the internet. He's a 25-year-old political commentator and influencer, or independent journalist, as he likes to present himself. He hosts his online shows The Dive and now Legitimate Targets on the platform Rumble.
We've got a lot to talk about tonight. Thank you all for being here.
He's also been called a grifter, an anti-Semitic troll, a well-known liar, and a wind-up symbol monkey distributing Russian stooge talking points.
If you're watching, drop a like, retweet, follow, all that stuff.
It's getting harder to do all that stuff. Jackson's been banned from YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and a whole bunch of other places on the internet for spreading misinformation, mostly about the war in Ukraine. His most recent shtick is exploiting the horrors of the war in Gaza, tweeting constantly with supposedly breaking news from the conflict that's often wrong, sharing graphic images, glorifying dead Hamas and Hezbollah figures, and taking legitimate criticism of Israel all the way into conspiracy territory.
Many of the leading Zionists defending mass rape and child killing in Gaza were good friends with Jeffrey Epstein. This is not a coincidence.
We'll dig into the accusation that he's grifting off Gaza a little bit later in this video. But once upon a time, he was just a teenaged environmentalist with a knack for getting media coverage. He was featured in Teen Vogue. He helped promote a plastic-free bottled water company founded by Will Smith's son.
What's up? I'm Jaden Smith, co-founder of Just Water.
Hold up.
He was in an ad encouraging young people to vote.
I'm voting for the future of our planet.
And given what we're about to cover, I think it's worth highlighting this quote from someone who knew and worked with Jackson Hinkle back in those early years.
Perry Mead, a progressive organizer who worked with Mr. Hinkle on campaigns as teenagers, said his overarching understanding of Jackson was that he always wanted to be famous, adding, "Sure, he cared about things, but he came first."
At some point, the things Jackson Hinkle cared about changed. He started his online show, The Dive with Jackson Hinkle, at YouTube, where he shared his provocative hot takes about geopolitics, until YouTube decided they were just too hot and pulled his channel down. Just to give you a little flavour of the way he views the world now. He thinks Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad is a hero. More on that later. He says Putin has God on his side and the war in Ukraine is simply the Russians fighting the good fight against neo-Nazi oppression.
When it comes to the Russian military, they're liberating Ukrainians from the Nazi rule.
He says
Kim Jong-un is a peace-seeking leader.
And
No, I do not condemn Hamas.
so yeah, he's a lot less about trying to save the planet and a lot more about trying to be an edgelord. Are these the tweets of a serious political commentator?
Never underestimate the evil lengths they will go. After all, they killed Jesus.
They being Jews?
The bomb alert map looks the same as the pedophile map in Israel today. Breaking. Morbidly obese Palestinian DJ Khaled has still done nothing for Gaza. Happy October 7th.
Yes, that's a paraglider emoji. I think it's worth noting at this point that Jackson Hinkle is on the record as saying that he only does things for the online attention or clout that it brings.
I did it for the clout. I do everything for the clout.
Nice.
You will never see me do something not for the clout. That is the only way I operate.
So while it may seem really obvious that this is not a person who should be taken seriously, there are plenty of people who do. I mean, he got to speak at the United Nations as a political commentator and journalist in a press briefing sponsored by Russia.
I want to share my experiences from my recent trip to the newly liberated territories of the Russian Federation in the Donbass.
He's frequently interviewed by or featured in other news media, CNN, The New York Times, Piers Morgan, and many, many other YouTubers and podcasters have spoken to him or about him, often with a level of respect that I don't think he deserves. This is how Chris Cuomo introduced him on his show.
Jackson Hinkle, thank you very much. It's good to have you here. It's nice to talk to somebody who's at the head of the next generation of a lot of social media and political thought in the country.
Calling Jackson Hinkle the head of the next generation of political thought is pretty offensive to the next generation of political thought. Let's take a look at the fruits of his big brain. This is how he now positions himself.
Zionists are smearing me. So let me be very clear. I am an American patriot, God-fearing, pro-family, Marxist-Leninist, pro-Palestine, Russia and China, anti-deep state, anti-imperialist, anti-woke, pro-growth, anti-monopoly, pro-gun, pro-fossil fuel.
And that real heady brew of political beliefs he's branded as MAGA communism. Because why?
MAGA communism it's just a term, it's a slogan that was kind of created because a lot of communists in America, right off the Trump base, the working class movement in this country, call them all racist or misogynistic or whatever, when in actuality the MAGA working class is basically the only politically class conscious movement in America that we have.
I'm no political scientist, but I am not sure that simply being a working class movement equals communism. But as an attention-seeking slogan, it certainly worked. He's very happy about the coverage it got him, tweeting, "Everyone is talking about it, #MAGA communism," with a montage of some of the media coverage.
I came across you with the trending hashtag MAGA communism.
Look, I think this is a really interesting phenomenon. I think it might be positive, actually.
So I'm going to let you explain.
To help us understand what MAGA communism really stands for.
What is MAGA communism?
And how does this political genius make the case for bringing socialism and communism to America? By pointing to great success stories elsewhere in the world. On a recent trip to Venezuela, he posted this video as evidence that the West is lying about the state of that country.
Look, every dumb conservative in America will tell you that Venezuela has, nothing on their grocery shelves and that people are starving. I want to show you the truth about what the grocery stores in Venezuela look like. So here you go. First of all, we've got crazy amount of produce over here. We got all the baby goods you could ever want.
Wow, lots of meats, more meats than we have in America. This is amazing.
To all you Teep USA retards, all of you PragerU retards, fuck you, stop lying about Venezuela. This is what Venezuela really looks like. And it's pretty damn incredible.
Real Tucker Carlson in Russia vibes.
Oh, come on.
And just like with Tucker, there are only two possible explanations for that logic. He's either being brazenly disingenuous or he's dumb as dog shit. Neither are good. Now, being an attention seeker as dumb as a box of bricks isn't necessarily harmful, but stoking outrage and spreading lies to profit from an already highly contentious conflict is pretty fucked up. And that's what he's doing with the war in the Middle East.
The martyrdom of Hezbollah's Hassan Nasrallah has left me heartbroken.
Is there anything more cringe than a white Christian surfer dude from California posting about the martyrdom of a Lebanese Shia Islam cleric? Where are the cultural appropriation cops when we need them? But to really understand what's going on here, let's go back to October 7th, 2023, the day Hamas attacked Israel, but also the very same day Jackson Hinkle tweeted a complaint about not earning enough money on X.
I'm one of the biggest accounts on X, but only receive $100 to $400 per pay period. This is seriously wrong.
Remember, this was not long after he'd been sanctioned by YouTube for spreading misinformation, something which really hurt his bottom line.
They have permanently demonetized my YouTube channel for over a year and a half. That means that, I based on my views, I should be receiving about $30,000 to $50,000 a month, but I received a grand total of $0.
And it was at this point that he suddenly became a hugely passionate pro-Palestine activist, tweeting a whole bunch of pretty inflammatory and often untrue stuff about Gaza, Israel, and Hamas. Even if you weren't following him, there's a good chance you were seeing him in your feed.
I'd never heard of Jackson Hinkle until the events on October 7th in Israel, and then he was all over my feed. He's a massive wanker.
Pretty sure she's Australian. He pretty quickly saw a massive increase in his followers, jumping from 417,000 to over 2 million in just a few weeks. He's now at 2.8 million followers on X, although how many of those followers are real isn't clear. It does seem like a decent proportion of them are bots. Now, maybe he is a sincere believer in the Palestinian cause. But I've searched Jackson Hinkle's Twitter feed and can only find 10 other tweets ever mentioning Gaza, and all of them are from one 11-day period in May 2021. So, no tweets about Gaza or Palestine for well over 2 years until October 7th, the very day he's crying poor, and then suddenly many tweets about Gaza, which seemed to pay off. One analysis found he gained 8.3 times more followers in the 4 months after the October 7 attacks than in the 4 months before them.
What I need all of you to do is get the following hashtag trending. Israel bombed Noah. Get it trending on X.
And it's not like he was just trying to share a message. He was asking people to throw some cash at him by subscribing to his premium X account to help him, quote, expose and crush Zionist lies.
You can also support the show by subscribing to my X Premium for measly $3 a month, less than a cup of coffee, and you will be doing your part to support the truth and independent journalism.
But instead of the truth and independent journalism, Jackson Hinkle's X account is just a fire hose of misinformation. I won't waste too much time going into detail on the misinformation here. It's been very well documented by others online. You can look it up yourself. I suggest this Bellingcat investigation as a starting point. The point I want to make is that so much of the misinformation he shares is easily disprovable. One image he falsely claimed was from Gaza, but was actually from the Syrian conflict in 2016, had actually won an award in a photography competition 4 years earlier. It only took a couple of mouse clicks to work that out. And when there's hardly a shortage of real images of the carnage in Gaza that he could share, it seems to me that sharing false ones is either a tactic to undermine the Palestinian cause or a deliberate attempt to get more engagement with his account. Earlier this year, in an interview with the New York Times, Jackson Hinkle was asked about the not from Gaza photos he's shared, and he said,
I think if we're going to focus on people who are putting out false information, an incorrect Twitter photo is not the biggest deal in comparison to lies that are used to sell a war.
To which I'd say, your false information isn't just one Twitter photo, and surely no lies about war are good? Side note, here's how that anti-war, anti-lies guy introduced a spokesperson for Yemen's Houthis. They're the Iranian-backed militant group in Yemen who keep targeting ships in the Red Sea.
They have exposed that 9/11 was an inside job. Most politicians across the world won't touch that one.
I mean, okay.
They have bombed US and UK military ships.
They haven't.
Bankrupted the Israeli economy.
They haven't. But I digress. In that same interview with the New York Times, he was also asked about his surge in popularity on X amid the war in Gaza. And this is what he said.
It was a godsend for me at the time. I was very fortunate.
Now, that is a pretty damning quote. And so to be very fair to Jackson, let's see what he had to say when he was asked about that quote.
Now, some people, including people on our side, are saying that this quote proves somehow that you're a quote-unquote grifter who doesn't really care about the suffering in Gaza and sees it as a godsend for your popularity online. How would you respond to those accusations?
I feel like, I personally am a Christian, and I feel like there's some sort of, level of fortune there that has to be recognized and appreciated. That right when I got banned and my number one source of income was stripped from me by the deep state and the warmongers, that, my following went up. Now, the way they portrayed that in the New York Times was to make it seem as though I was saying that the events in Gaza were a godsend, which is ridiculous and honestly twisted and sick based on my actual opinions of what's going on in Gaza and what I think about it. Surface level analysis could show I don't think what's happening there is a godsend or anything like that.
So he was simply saying that as a Christian, he was just recognizing the good fortune that his following went up when his income was taken away. I'm not sure the Christian God would start a conflict in the Middle East just to help Jackson Hinkle out. Now, I have edited that clip down a little bit just for time. If you want to see the full exchange, look up Reports on China. What is MAGA communism? Jackson Hinkle explains. He's asked at around about the 8-minute 30 mark. And for what it's worth, he's just started a new online show called Legitimate Targets, Seeing Through the Smoke, which he launched on October 7th.
I mean, what's not to love about October 7th? You have Al-Aqsa flood, you have President Putin's birthday, and now you have the launching of Legitimate Targets. Okay, beautiful day.
Now, aside from his Gaza activism, Jackson Hinkle has a whole shtick about how great Russia is, especially in comparison to America.
You have a government that actually cares about the people and the success of your country, unlike in the West.
He frames his commentary as independent journalism, sort of breaking free from the mainstream narratives pushed by Western media. He's made multiple trips to Russia where he rides around in their tanks and goes on Russian TV and says things like this.
We know that Joe Biden's not the one in control. He's not the one writing his own tweets right now. Joe Biden is controlled by a satanic cabal of DC deep state leadership, people who most of the American public will never know the names of. We never elected these people, yet they hold an undue level of control over where our country goes and how we operate globally.
There's a fine line between making legitimate criticism of the power that faceless bureaucrats can wield in Western democracies and just pushing outright Russian propaganda. And I reckon Jackson Hinkle crosses that line at satanic cabal. In fact, he puts out so much pro-Russia stuff that many people openly wonder whether he's being paid by them. Now, as far as I know, there's no evidence of that. Although he did have a Russian girlfriend for a while, so maybe he's just a bit pussy-whipped. I do know that I've watched the entirety of his interviews with Russian government officials, and let me just say, they are not exactly hard-hitting. The entire 60 minutes of this one with the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman is basically just her spouting out a whole bunch of Russian talking points and him just smiling and nodding in agreement. Just to give you a taste of it, she went on a whole rant about how the West doesn't want peace, ending on this bit.
I'm watching all these politicians in the West, and nobody's using the word peace at all. It's not on an agenda. Nobody's calling for peace. Nobody is just addressing people about peace. And when they are just directly asked about peace, what do they respond? They respond that it's not the right time to talk about peace. What? What should it be, and how would it look, this right time for peace? After nuclear disaster, or what?
Does Jackson, our intrepid independent journalist, take this opportunity to ask her what Russia's idea of peace is? No. He says,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's insane.
What a brave boy. That is the kind of courage that will make you the only independent journalist in Russia to avoid a stray syringe full of nerve agent.
People are scared that I came here. They think something bad's going to happen to me. I tell them, I said, you know, Moscow, it's probably safer than being in Miami, where I'm from right now. It's very safe.
Mate, you're safe as houses in Moscow as long as you keep blowing smoke up the asses of the people in charge there. What else? China. Oh yes, China. He also thinks China is great and is especially delighted by the experience of their social media platforms.
The beautiful thing about the Chinese platforms that I'm on is, it seems as though not only is there a level of meritocracy and openness with what you can discuss, but also the online community, and I'm sure this is something you've experienced with your program, those who engage in discussions in the comment sections, those who share videos and posts, it's far less surface level than what we see on any American platform.
That's right. He likes the openness of the famously uncensored Chinese internet. But look, hardly anything this guy says is coherent or consistent. He'll make hyperbolic statements like this.
The other platforms in America operate more like Western-style liberal democracies, where if anyone tries to challenge the establishment, they will be censored, they will be disappeared, or they'll simply be forced out of any position of authority and power.
And then, a few minutes later, in the very same interview, he's asked about the Gaza protest movement across America.
But I wanted to ask you what your take is on the recent anti-genocide protests taking place all across your country on university campuses.
You know, I think I think they have very noble goals. The main goal of those protests is to divest, get these major private universities and some public universities in the United States to divest their money from stocks and bonds and investments associated with either the Israeli government or the military industrial complex. And I think that's, again, a very noble effort.
I'm not sure whether anyone's ever asked him to point to similar noble effort protest movements in places like Russia or China, but I'd be curious to know if he can. CNN recently pushed him on his suggestion that people in China and Russia are more free than the United States.
Well, they're far less authoritarian than the United States.
Come on, man. You can't genuinely say that people in Russia and people in China have more liberties than people in the United States.
Well, there's no free speech.
You have a lot of free speech.
Really?
You
think I have free speech?
You don't think you have free speech?
No. I mean, what's the public square today? It's obviously social media.
You have 3 million followers on X. You can post whatever you want. You're hosting events here. How do you not have free speech? What part of your speech is being curtailed?
It's very simple. It's very simple. Yes, I have 3 million followers on X. But what about Instagram? I've been banned. YouTube, I've been banned. I was banned from Raya, a dating site.
To be fair, being banned from Raya, a dating app for celebrities, is probably the American equivalent of Tiananmen Square. Broadly speaking, my main takeaway from having watched way too many hours of Jackson Hinkle is that he's at best a complete dipshit or doing a bit, or at worst, a cynical nihilist. His main trick is to vomit out a whole bunch of political or smart-sounding words that don't actually mean anything, but sadly seem to convince some people that he knows what he's talking about. And there's one video in particular that I think really shows what I mean by that. And it's only 11 minutes long, so for anyone who's interested in seeing how Jackson Hinkle responds when challenged to explain some of his most ridiculous positions, I encourage you to check it out. In this clip, he's asked why he supports Syrian President Bashar al-Assad.
You've described him as a hero, and this has earned you the ire of many Muslim and Arab anti-Assadists.
The host then runs through a long list of al-Assad and his regime's abuses before asking,
what I'd like you to do now is clarify your position on Bashar al-Assad, tell us why you describe him as a hero, and how you would characterize his governance in Syria.
And the bit I'm about to show you is as clear an answer as we get out of Jackson Hinkle on that question.
I guess when I look at Assad and I say he's a hero, and I say as an American patriot I stand with him, or any leader for that matter, be it Putin or Xi Jinping, I mean, I can appreciate things about what they do for their own countries while also recognizing that there are issues. Nothing's perfect. But the main thing that I look at when I look at, the IRGC or Yemen or Putin or Assad is not any of that, how they actually govern their countries, but what are they doing in the struggle against imperialism? Because I do think that's heroic.
So he's saying he doesn't care what leaders like al-Assad do to their own people. He thinks they're heroes for resisting imperialism, which is an interesting take. But the rest of that clip, which goes for another 8 minutes, is just absolute gibberish. Check out the transcript. He rambles about the Alawites and the radical elements of Sunni Islam and Salafists and Wahhabists and the Ba'athist Party and CIA Mujahideen fighters and al-Baghdadi and Al Jazeera, and it just goes on and on and on. He's just throwing out words that relate to the Middle East, and none of it answers the guy's question about how he would characterize al-Assad's governance in Syria. And yet, there are comments on that video that say,
very articulate, clearly speaking young man.
Well-educated young man.
Although, to be fair, there are also comments that say,
why are you platforming this grifter?
So, I guess not everyone's buying the act. And I am sorry too for giving him any more airtime. So, shall we run Jackson Hinkle through my judging criteria? 1. Can you generally trust that what this person says is factual? No, you can't. 2. Are they open about their political bias, perspective, or incentives? Gonna have to fail him on that count too. 3. Do they offer something of value to the discourse? No, this is just toxic sludge being screamed into your feed. Finally, is he accountable? I don't think he knows or cares what that means, so no. Overall, my recommendation is that you smash that mute button. It's perfectly fine if you want to hear views that are anti-war or pro-Palestine or even pro-Russia or about the West's role in foreign conflicts or the failings of America. But there are plenty of other places you can go to for that kind of commentary and analysis where it's done in good faith and by people who know what they're talking about. This guy, this ain't it. I find it incredibly depressing that he's managed to succeed as much as he has. Unfortunately, the media landscape of today tends to reward the kinds of people who can attract the most attention, but I still just don't know why anybody treats him as a serious person in any way. The only possibly mitigating factor for this fuckwit is his age. They say the human brain isn't fully developed until we're 25, possibly even closer to 30. Jackson Hinkle only just turned 25. Maybe he's about to grow up. That's all from me for now. If you have any comments or would like to make a suggestion for other people you'd like to see reviewed, feel free to leave a comment or to email me at theinternet@gmail.com.